Good morning. I'm Bob Papanetti, President and CEO of the Literacy Cooperative. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us this morning for our Cuyahoga County Literacy Dashboard presentation. We've been doing this presentation since 2019. And if you've been here before, you know that some years there's more focus on early literacy, and in other years there's a little more focus on adult literacy, oftentimes driven by if we have some new data to share. This year will, of course, be some of both, but maybe a little more focus on the adult low literacy information. As Lori just mentioned, if you'd like to introduce yourselves in the chat, please feel free to do so. It's always nice to see who's in the room. Also, if through this presentation you have questions, please also put those in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end and get to as many of those as possible. Next, please. You could see our agenda. As I said, I'll talk a little bit about some of the early literacy information. And then joining me today is Alex Dorman, who's a research fellow with the Center for Community Solutions, and also Lori Atkins Holliday, who's Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for the Literacy Cooperative. They will be sharing some information about the adult literacy information from the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies, and also some interesting neighborhood level data in the city of Cleveland. Next, please. The Literacy Cooperative, we were created in 2006 to really look for opportunities to bring research and information to our partners, look for opportunities to better connect literacy to other initiatives that were happening in our community, raise awareness around the implications of low literacy, and together with our partners, identify strategies to fill any gaps and opportunities that we identify in the literacy pathway. Our focus areas are and have been since our beginning around early childhood literacy, and for us that focus is birth to the age of 5. Low adult literacy, and we look at that through the lens of workforce development and career pathways. And as we looked at our strategic priority areas, we're working with children and adults, so we're really looking at families and how to make Cuyahoga County a more family-focused service delivery area. Next, please. I always like to look at this, the literacy cycle. Like so many other things, literacy is handed down generation to generation. We think of all those many behaviors, habits, traits are deep-rooted in our upbringing. So if we look to the upper right-hand corner of that chart there, kindergarten readiness, 65% of Cuyahoga County kindergartners are starting kindergarten not fully prepared. That, of course, leads to some challenges leading up to the 3rd grade reading, which research has said is one of the best predictors of a child's success in school. And as you can see, 36% of Ohio children are not proficient in reading in the 3rd grade. However, 96% are make it over the bar that has been set for the 3rd grade reading guarantee and are moving on to 4th grade, which of course challenges throughout school. 11% don't make it to graduation. And we all know that a high school diploma is not necessarily a proxy for being literate, as we've seen many recent high school graduates who are still considered low literate. And then, of course, we have our adult literacy statistic that 54% of the adults in Cuyahoga County are not proficient in reading, 64% are not proficient in math. And while we know that the majority of those people in that category are working, oftentimes are working in lower wage jobs with minimal chances for advancement, and many of them struggle even to get into training programs that were designed to give people the skills to get better paying jobs. Next, please. So I'll just start a little bit on early childhood. Certainly over the last few weeks, there's been some troubling information that's been reported. The National Assessment of Educational Progress Report, which is the nation's report card, was released. It measures and looks at 4th and 8th grade reading and math scores across the country. The headline this year was, "We're at historic lows." A deeper look into Cleveland's numbers were even more troubling. Next, please. According to the report, student reading and math scores remain stubbornly low in Cleveland. Cleveland is one of 25 cities that shares data and participates in the NAEP study Next, please. Of those 25 cities, Cleveland was 24th. Second from the bottom, only topping Detroit. The Cleveland numbers further showed that only 8% of Cleveland fourth and eighth graders scored proficient in reading, and 72% of Cleveland fourth graders were below basic, meaning they struggle with fundamental reading skills. We shouldn't be overly shocked and surprised that these fourth grade reading scores weren't very good, because as we know, children often begin kindergarten without the foundation in place. Next, please. Groundwork Ohio recently released a very thorough report which showed some of the challenges that young families have. Certainly one of those being that children don't get the foundation before they enter kindergarten. In their report, they showed that 2 out of 3 Ohio children aren't ready for kindergarten when they start. The Cuyahoga County numbers are pretty similar, as I shared in that literacy cycle. If you look at children entering kindergarten in CMSD, more like 80% are starting kindergarten without the foundation in place. We know this is not an issue of ability or intelligence. It's often just a lack of access. We know that books in the home are a really good thing, and the more books in the home, the more likelihood that child will get further in their education. Even better than books in the home is families that are reading those books to those children in the home and exposing those children to print, to letters, to sounds, to concepts, which is why we're so strongly encouraged and believe in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program, which is getting books into the homes of children in Cuyahoga County. A child enrolled in Imagination Library will get a brand new age-appropriate book in the mail every month until the age of 5 at no cost to the family. A brand new age-appropriate book in the mail every month until the age of 5 at no cost to the family. We lead Imagination Library in Cuyahoga County. And next slide, please. You can see that over the past 5 years, there's been a steady increase in the number of children who have benefited from Imagination Library in Cuyahoga County. Big jump there in between 2019 and 20, and then 2020 is when we went countywide. So we just recently celebrated our 5-year anniversary of the program being available to every child under the age of 5 in Cuyahoga County. As our enrollments have grown, the number of books being distributed has grown as well. Next, please. Last year alone, over 450,000 books were mailed to Cuyahoga County children. Since program inception here in Cuyahoga County, more than 2 million books have gone into the hands of Cuyahoga County children. There have been studies across the country, here locally as well, to show that there is a positive relationship between a child's readiness for kindergarten and their participation in Imagination Library. We also conduct an annual survey of parents each year to learn some insights from them on how this program is affecting them and their children's interest in reading. The Center for Community Solutions receives all of those responses and puts together a very nice report for us. And so I'll turn it over to Alex Dorman, the Center for Community Solutions, to share the results from the survey we conducted late in 2024. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Give me just a second here so I can share my screen. All right, perfect. All right, good morning. So my name is Alex Dorman. I'm a research fellow at the Center for Community Solutions. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit think tank based in Cleveland, Ohio. Of course, we have a small but mighty office out in Columbus as well. And as Bob mentioned, we've been working with the Literacy Cooperative for 5+ years now, helping them with a handful of things. But one of my favorite things that I get to work on with the Literacy Cooperative is this annual survey that we do, focusing on getting opinions from the families who are a part of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you guys about today. So a little bit about the survey. The Literacy Cooperative knows that putting books in the hands of children and families is important, but they're also fully aware that having the data to back that up is just as important, right? You need evidence to support your claims. So every year, a survey is sent out to all participants in the program. The survey is voluntary, it's confidential, and it's pretty short, couple, 5, 10 minutes, and it's non-invasive. We try to make sure we're not asking too many invasive questions. We want to make this a positive experience. Uh, and the point of the survey is to measure impact and satisfaction with the program. That's kind of top line stuff. But it's also an opportunity to give parents of children in this program a chance to talk about the program in their own words. And that kind of feedback is, of course, critical for a program like this. So, with that background covered, I want to talk a little bit about who we heard from this year. I think the survey went out late in 2024, and we got just over 2,000 responses. So, that's 2,000 responses for 2,000 unique children who are enrolled in the program. As you can see, we got pretty good geographic representation across the county. So, we ask folks to provide their zip code to make sure that we are not only hearing from families in Lakewood. We want to make sure that we're hearing from families throughout the entire county so that there's good representation of opinion. And recently, I think as recent as last year, we started asking just a handful of demographic questions so that we could also get an idea of making sure that the people that we're hearing from for this survey is representative of the county as a whole. So what you can see here is we asked the parents if they were comfortable giving us this information, what their child's racial background was. And what you can see here is the spread of racial demographics very closely mirrors that of Cuyahoga County, at least for the 91% of families that were comfortable sharing that information with us. Similarly, we also ask about annual household income. We just put it into a broad 4 buckets. And just for some reference here, the median income of Cuyahoga County is just a little over 60,000 a year. So this is a pretty good spread. It's almost perfect quarters of the 4 buckets of income. But another reason that we collect this information is a persistent finding of doing this survey year after year is that for families that are lower income, which is pretty arbitrarily defined, honestly, we don't want to ask exact numbers here. That feels a little too invasive for this. But for, a proxy measure of lower income, meaning less than $25,000 annually, we isolate those families and how they respond to the survey. And what we find is satisfaction is much higher and impact is often significantly greater, more positive. And I'll explain a little bit what that means as I get through some of the questions here. But that's some of the reasoning behind why we wanted to ask those questions, because this program is important for everyone. But what we found is, at least when it comes to impact and satisfaction, the numbers are even greater for lower income households. So perhaps one of the most obvious things that we're interested in learning about with a survey like this is, are young children getting more excited about reading? And, so we just ask, ever since receiving these books, is your child asking you to read to them more? And what we found is 85% of respondents reported that yes, their children are coming asking to read with their parents more after getting these books. And for these lower income households earning less than $25,000 annually, that number is 11 percentage points even higher. It's 96% of these households are reporting that yes, their kids are asking them to read to them more after enrolling in this program. We're also interested in parents' perceptions of the benefits of being a part of this program. So we ask, do you believe that participation in this program is helping your child better prepare for kindergarten? And what we get overwhelmingly year after year is yes, the 9 in 10 respondents, 91% are believing that engaging with these books is indeed helping their young children get ready for kindergarten. And then a little, so that's kind of a, subjective. Do you believe this measures a little more objective? We ask, how often are you finding your children using the words that he or she has learned from the books that you guys are reading together? And what we find is, a little over half of respondents are saying that yes, we often see my child using these words. Another third of respondents are saying, yeah, sometimes I see, our kid responding or using these words. And, the 10% saying rarely, I don't see. But I mean, these are tangible impacts that we are seeing from participation in this program. So a question that we added just last year to better understand the impact the Imagination Library books were potentially having for the family as a whole. And this was kind of a unique idea. I would have never thought to ask a question like this, but we asked, of the survey taker, are you personally reading more since the books have been coming into the household? And I would have never guessed that the numbers would be as high as to say 3 in 4 respondents are saying that, yes, they are personally themselves reading more after engaging with the program. And in these lower income households, that number again jumps up to 86%. So you can see that that's why we ask about income, because this program is for everyone. But when you're able to make those cross tabs with the data, you get some really fascinating insights here. And this is reminiscent of questions that we've asked in the past, where we asked, do older siblings who have, aged out of the program, do they still engage with the books? Are they still interested in the books that their younger siblings are receiving? And yes, the answer is overwhelmingly yes. The whole family, especially all the children, still find enjoyment with these books, even when they've technically aged out of the program. So I think last year we started asking some of these questions, again, some deeper insights into what engaging in the program is like, the experience of the child, maybe beyond just the act of reading with parents. And what we found is the vast majority of kids or parents reported that kids interact with the books. I think it's kids over the age of 2. We put a cutoff there. Uh, but kids over the age of 2 are still independently interacting with the books, even without their parents being there, which is indicating some interest, some enjoyment of the books, even beyond just the act of reading together. We had almost 90% of children feeling inspired to learn more about a topic after reading an Imagination Library book, which we think is fantastic, right? Exposing kids to new ideas, new concepts, things they maybe didn't have access to before, or maybe they just a new interest. But for 90% of the parents who took this survey, they said, yeah, we saw our kids, following through with something they found interesting in what they were reading about. Um, and then we asked, when reading the books, are you talking with your child about the characters and the plot and the pictures, right? Are you going beyond just the words on the text? I'm sorry, the text on the pages. And what we found was just under 60% of parents said, yeah, we're always doing this. We're always having conversations about the books as we're reading them. And then just over another third reported that, yeah, we do that some of the time. So we find this to be incredibly positive, right? We know that parents and children reading together is critically important, but it goes beyond just the book, right? It's new interests, it's talking about things that maybe the kids wouldn't have had access to before cracking open that book. So we were also interested in, and this was a new question for this year. Like I said, we've been doing this survey for 5 years, so we get good ideas about, if we have an idea thread we want to pull, this is a great opportunity to do so. We were interested in asking, is receiving these books having a positive impact on your family relationships broadly? And we let that be broad on purpose. We let that be defined by the survey taker, whatever positive impact means. Uh, I don't think any of us could have predicted that close to 9 in 10 families would have said, yeah, the impact has been positive. And the narrative makes sense. We didn't exactly drill down on why, but I mean, you have parents spending more time with their kids, perhaps having conversations about things that are exciting the kids who are reading these books. So I think this was a really fantastic new question to add to this survey. I never would have thought of asking something like this, but these results are just overwhelmingly positive. And not that anyone would have ever been concerned about this, but I would like to highlight only 1% of respondents thought that no, this was not having a positive impact. So that feels like a win. So we're also interested in public library use, right? One of the next best ways to get access to free books once a program like this perhaps is aged out of. And what we found is about 4 in 5 respondents who took the survey indeed had library cards. And about 42% of respondents said that they actually started going to the library more after receiving Imagination Library books. So again, narratively, that makes sense to me. If you have so many kids being interested and excited about books, what a great way to access a ton of more children's books than to start going to the library more. I will say, I think it was about 50% of respondents said that this had no impact on their engagement with the library. So, broadly, very positive findings when it comes to engaging with the libraries. Uh, but I do want to take a moment to highlight the fact that that's still about 20% of respondents who said that they don't have a library card. And for our lower income households who took the survey, that was closer to about a quarter of respondents who said they don't have a library card. And while a part of that could be a potential, outreach, that could be something that we could help, some families, learn about, get access to the library. I think it's more important to acknowledge that there could be some barriers here to accessing the library, whether it's transportation, the freedom to do so, just having the time to take your kids to the library. I do think it's important to acknowledge that while about 20% of the respondents who took this survey didn't have a library card, that might not be that might not be because they don't know about how great a library is. It might be because there's some real barriers there, which again is just highlighting the importance of reducing these barriers and putting books in the homes of children by sending them to these families directly. So, a final way to conceptualize or contextualize the importance of this program is we ask what percentage of the children's books in your household is comprised of Dolly Parton Imagination Library books. And what we found is for half of households, or half of the households who responded, Imagination Library books comprise at least half of all the children's books in their home. That number was 78% for lower income households. So for almost 4 in 5 households uh, who were lower income, Imagination Library books made up over half of their the books in their home. And I do want to say for about a third, a little over a third of all lower income households, Imagination Library books were nearly all of the children's books in their household. So this is just another really good way to realize the impact, the importance of participation in this program and some of the benefits that this program can have. Which is why I'm going to talk just a little bit here about the scope. Who's engaging with these books. And what we have is currently right now a little over 38,000 children throughout the county are enrolled in the program. And that represents a little over half of the 0 to 4-year-olds within Cuyahoga County. That's according to most recent census estimates. And for these reasons, knowing how important this program is, the Literacy Cooperative is always pushing to make sure that everyone within the county is engaging as much as possible, that they're reaching as many children throughout the county as possible. And one way to kind of look at that, to measure that engagement, is to look at the number of children who are enrolled by municipality throughout the county. And that's what this chloropleth here is showing. This is the darker the blue, the greater the percentage of children under the age of 5 who are enrolled in the program. And what we can see here is some of the areas where the Literacy Cooperative has the strongest engagement are in places like North Olmsted, Bedford Heights, Independence, and Brooklyn Heights. And the areas with the lowest engagement include places like Lindale, Glen Willow, Hunting Valley, and Woodmere. These are all places that have relatively small populations, but by percentage, they were all around that like 10 to 20% mark for engagement. But the area where, of course, the Literacy Cooperative is serving the largest number of children, not the rate, but the number, is in Cleveland, right? So we have around 11,000 children who are currently enrolled within Cleveland. That represents around half of the children under the age of 5 within the city. And what we can do here is by mapping the addresses of the enrolled individuals and then uh, chopping that up by neighborhood, we get an idea of the neighborhoods that are some of the most engaged with being enrolled in the program. And what we see is the areas with the greatest engagement include Lee Seville, Euclid Green, Cam's Corners, and downtown. Those are areas that all have over an estimated 80% engagement rate. And then some of the areas with the lowest engagement include the Central neighborhood, Edgewater, and West Boulevard, all neighborhoods that have engagement at or below about 36% of the children under the age of 5. So signing children up all across the county is something that, of course, the Literacy Cooperative will continue to focus on, making sure that children throughout the city and the county continue to have access to this program and all of its benefits. But one of the best ways, of course, to measure that progress is to do things like this and see where some of the strengths are and see where some of the areas of future outreach could be. So I'm going to take a moment. I know I've been talking for a while. I'm going to pass this on to Lori, and she's going to take over here.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, now we'll transition into adult literacy. Next slide. First, a brief explanation of the data set used to compile the information. PIAC, also known as the Survey of Adult Skills, is designed to assess adults' skills over a broad range of abilities, from simple reading and numerical calculations to complex digital problem solving. This assessment is conducted with adults at all educational attainment levels. Next slide. PIAC assesses the literacy of adults to measure their ability to achieve goals and to develop their knowledge and potential, and assesses numeracy to measure their abilities to engage in and manage mathematical demands of a range of situations in adult life. Next slide. The PIAC scale is a continuum, and when PIAC released the state and county data back in 2020, they combined the 6 levels into 3. There is a wide range of 2 of the levels and a short range for the middle. PIAC labeled level 1 and below at the lower end of ability. Although it does not include anyone that can't read or write, it would include someone with very limited skill. This level is one of the levels with a very wide span and would include varying degrees of ability or proficiency across the range. Level 2 is a very small range and termed as near proficient or mid-level proficiency. And level 3 is above, and above is the highest level. At the lowest end of level 3, adults are considered proficient in literacy and numeracy. You will notice that Cuyahoga County averages for literacy and numeracy fall between the level 2 range. It's important to note also that the average scores for the nation, Ohio, and Cuyahoga County are at a level 2. Okay, now I'm going to turn it back to Alex to explain more about the county data and the data for City of Cleveland neighborhoods.
All right, sorry you guys get to hear me prattle on a little more here, but I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of this PIAC data. So in Cuyahoga County, as Lori just mentioned, we can get an idea of where the residents fall. So the way that PIAC typically shares this information at the county level is they look at level 1 and below, level 2, that kind of sliver right in the middle, and then anyone at level 3 and above. And what you can see is for just under half of the county, residents fall at that level 3 or above rate. About a third of the county falls at level 2, and just under about a fifth of the county falls at level 1 or below. And this data is certainly insightful, but we know that there's a lot of variability within Cuyahoga County. Geography really matters in this area. And unfortunately, PIAC does typically only release this data at the county level. However, for the first time using a method that the Center for Community Solutions developed to create our neighborhood fact sheets last year, we were able to make some adjustments to the data and the levels of proficiency to try to make estimates of proficiency for the city of Cleveland. And the way that we did this was at the county level, PIAC releases this data at level of education. So it's as broken out by 4 groups: less than a high school diploma, high school or high school equivalency, some college, or a bachelor's degree or higher. And the rates of literacy proficiency are as expected here. The greater level of formal education you have, typically, the higher rates of these individuals having level 3 or above literacy, whereas the lower informal education you go, that rate shrinks and the rate or percentage of individuals with level 1 or lower starts to grow. So that's all relatively intuitive how that breaks out. But using this data, we can actually make adjustments based solely on level of education for the city of Cleveland based off of the composition of formal education of the city. So let's see. So this is an estimate just for the city of Cleveland. And what it shows is, honestly, it's relatively similar to Cuyahoga County, but we're able to see that about 40% of residents within the city of Cleveland are estimated at a level 3 or above, and about 25% are at level 1. And again, we're making this adjustment based off of the composition of Cleveland's residents' level of formal education. So that's how we take it from the county level, and then we adjust it to the city level. And we're able to take it just a step further and actually do these adjustments specifically by neighborhoods. And this is what we did for our fact sheets. So we're doing the exact same metric. We're taking based off of the educational composition of the residents of each of Cleveland's 34 neighborhoods. We can then make those adjustments based off the county rates and get an idea of what the literacy levels of Cleveland's neighborhoods are. So what you can see here, this is the percentage of residents within each neighborhood that are at that level 3 literacy or above. And what we see is you have concentrations in places like downtown, first and foremost, but also Ohio City, Tremont, Edgewater, the University neighborhood, and Buckeye Shaker. These were neighborhoods that were all where at least 47% or more of their residents were at that level 3 proficiency. And in fact, the downtown neighborhood was at the highest estimates with about 57% of the residents there at an estimated level 3 proficiency. And you can do the inverse of that as well. So you can look at the percentage of neighborhoods that are at level 1 literacy proficiency. And actually, it's a bit of a misnomer to say inverse because they're really not perfect inverses. It's that level 2, we're ignoring that for these maps here, just looking at level 3 and level 1. And what we see here is the neighborhoods with the highest percentages of residents who are at or below that level 1 literacy proficiency were the Stockyards neighborhoods, Central, Brooklyn Center, Broadway Slavic Village, St. Clair Superior, and Clark Fulton. And all of these neighborhoods had at least 29% of their residents or more at that level 1 proficiency. So whereas higher rates of level 3, and this is the beauty of mapping things, this gives you kind of an idea of geographic spread. Whereas higher rates of level 3 or greater literacy were certainly more concentrated to West Side neighborhoods and downtown, at least when it came to the city. What you see here is the spread of rates of level 1 literacy. It's actually a little more geographically spread throughout the city. You don't get that very typical east side, west side, redlining. I do a lot of mapping, and unfortunately, a lot of my maps tend to look similar, which anyone who's looked at maps of Cleveland start to know what those patterns represent. When it comes to level 1 literacy, I was actually a little surprised to see that it doesn't exactly follow those same trends. This is a citywide concern, and therefore, again, just bringing this all home, the importance of this program throughout the entirety of the city, but of course throughout the county as well. So it's super important to note here that PIAC data at the county level is starting to get dated. This data is still from 2020. That's the most recent release that PIAC has given at specifically a level as granular as county. And it's also important to note that these estimates are made based off of educational composition. That was the available data that we were able to use. It's a decent proxy, but it's not a perfect proxy. We know that level of education does not perfectly correlate to literacy proficiency. So take these maps instead as a way to get an idea, get an estimate, get a broad level view of proficiency throughout the county and the city, but certainly do not treat them as exact numbers and end all be all truth. So with those little caveats, I'm going to kick it back to Lori here. And Lori, I think I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thank you, Alex. And I just have to share my screen. It doesn't want to play right. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thanks again, Alex, for your work in analyzing and sharing the neighborhood information. And as Alex said, it is data from the last release that PIAC did for state and county data. What PIAC just did is there is an updated international release of PIAC that was released in December of 2024. It used data compiled from the survey completed in 2023, and this compares scores at national levels. These charts reflect the countries and economies' scores for the 2023 survey. Unfortunately, the new data reflects that the US is below the OECD average, that's the organization name, which is the average of all countries combined. The average score for literacy decreased by 12 points and by 7 points for numeracy. The different colors on the bars reflect the levels of literacy and numeracy, and the solid vertical line in the middle of the graph divides adults at below level or adult literacy levels at or below level 1 and adults at or above level 2. The percentages for US literacy is 11.5% for below level 1, a little over 16% at level 1, 28.5% at level 2, 30.6% at level 3, almost 12% at level 4, and 1.4% at level 5. For numeracy, almost 15% are below level 1, 19.4% at level 1, 27.7% at level 2, a little more than 26% at level 3, 10.1% at level 4, and almost 2% at level 5. Most of the published graphs indicate literacy and numeracy on the 3 levels that Alex used previously, combining below level 1 and 1 and then levels 3, 4, and 5. However, with the latest release, PIAC provided additional descriptions of the 5 levels. Here we see the level 1 and below indicates adults with low ability, while levels 2 and 3 indicate adults with moderate ability, and level 4 and 5 are levels of high ability. Between 2017 and 2023, the percentages of adults performing at the lowest level, level 1 and below, increased in both literacy and numeracy. In literacy, this percentage increased from 19 to 28%, and in numeracy from 29 to 34%. The percentages performing at the highest level, level 3 or above in 2023, were 44% in literacy, down from 48%, and 38% in numeracy, up from 37%. The arrows directly below the charts track the ability levels explained in the previous slide. For literacy, the low ability level is 28%, that's the level 1 and below. The moderate ability level is 59.1%, and that's when you combine level 2 with level 3. And the high ability level is 13.3, which is levels 4 and 5. For numeracy, 34% at low ability, 53.9% at moderate ability, and 11.9% at high ability. Comparing educational attainment, adults performing at level 1 or below in literacy and numeracy increased across all educational levels. This reaffirms that literacy and educational attainment do not universally go hand in hand for all adults. We will continue to review and provide more information about the national data on our website and in future publications. We now have time to take some questions, and then we will finish up with a call to action. Joan has been feverishly looking for questions as people have put them into chat, and I know she's answered a few. Joan, are there any unanswered questions?
Let's see. We already asked slides available later, and we are recording this, so that will be shared as well on the website, as will the full report that Alex was reporting on. We'll make that available as well. So one question was, what's next? What can I do now that I'm informed of the impact of the program, the challenges around literacy, and what are some actionable steps I can take now?
That's great. And we will be answering all of those questions at the very end. So stay tuned. That's our call to action.
Did anyone else have any other questions?
Okay.
No. Oh, well, I would like Bob. Bob, do you want to share anything about the impact of screens at all, or versus books?
Sure. I mean, certainly we know that increased screen time is one of the causes for the literacy challenges that we have, and seeing that the numbers are going in the wrong direction. Again, I think the need for helping children develop that love of books, real books, read by real people, will hopefully take some of the screen time away from them, that they'll choose a book rather than getting on that screen and that iPhone. And unfortunately, it's troubling that you see so many young children with devices and little conversation happening, with those around them.
Okay, and please, if you come up with other questions, please put them in the chat.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go to our call to action. So Bob's going to start.
Sure. So we invite you to join a network that the Literacy Cooperative and other community partners are part of, called the Side by Side Literacy Network. It actually was created as a result of a literacy summit that Mayor Bibb held in this last summer. And so this is a group of people coming together to really look at how we could impact literacy positively in Cuyahoga County. There's 4 different areas of focus that this group has. One is around training teachers and educating teachers. Also working in schools and classrooms to really look at implementing the science of reading that the state of Ohio has adopted. Looking at community resources. How do we bring together so many of these organizations that are out there doing this hard work and coming together in a more cohesive and fashion, and then connecting with family and youth resources. So there's an email there in the call to action. Please send an email and we will get back to you and give you more information on how you can be part of this network and which of those 4 areas your interests lie. Also, of course, tell people about Imagination Library. If you know anybody who has a child under the age of 5, I encourage you to mention this to them. It's free to the family. They will not only get these wonderful books in the mail, but we also use Imagination Library as a way to connect to the family. So via email, we'll send a welcome email, but then also share other valuable resources and services that are available here in the county that a lot of families just don't know about. We've certainly sent out information on behalf of many of you on this call. If you have a resource, if you have a service that you want families to know about where no costs are involved, let us know, let Joan know, let me know, and we'd be happy to look at getting your information out to families. It's a great way to, again, make families aware of some of this information and services that we have that could really benefit themselves and their families. And don't limit that only to resources or services for families with young children. We have sent information on behalf of hospitals that are doing health fairs. We send information out on behalf of workforce development partners that have scholarships for training programs that they're offering. And almost without exception, they see an increase in the number of people that contact them, that register for their event. So we're happy to promote the great work that you are doing, that many of our partners are doing.
We did get a couple other additional notes or questions. So I got an important reminder from our Northern Ohio Regional Director for Imagination Library of Ohio to talk about the fact that Ohio is part of a pilot now, one of several states in the country where families have the option to get a fully bilingual English and Spanish collection if they so choose. Um, so that just began a few months ago, and it'll be interesting to see how many families register. Should also note that there's more families enrolled in Imagination Library in Ohio than any other state in the country. Over 400,000 children are now enrolled in the state of Ohio. And then we were asked to highlight a story of, of an Imagination Library family. So, Bob, I don't know if you want to do that. I can think of one off the top of my head of a story that relates to how we do connect the information and do some programs for families.
Go ahead, Joe. Why don't you share that?
Okay, so we had a family, a mother called me to update her address for the program. We had just sent out an invitation to a family, a virtual program that we were doing for families. And that reminded her to update her address with us. And she told me that she had attended a previous program on financial literacy that we'd provided. And through that program, she had been connected to the presenters who had said that they could help people learn, especially people with lower incomes, learn how to get a mortgage to purchase a home. So the reason she had to change her address was because she had taken advantage of that workshop, learned how to purchase a home, had purchased her own home. When I went to look at her, when I went into the account to update the address, I could see how she had been enrolled in the program, and it was through the City of Cleveland Department of Public Health's Moms First program, which is a home visiting program for at risk. I think I can't remember how they define it, but families who can really benefit from a home visiting program. So we worked with a partner who helped enroll the family. The family took advantage of the program and the other additional add-ons that we put on, and then was able to purchase her own home. That story had me nearly in tears. And we do get feedback, my colleagues can attest to this every day, pretty much via email, phone calls, when people are updating their addresses with us. When we meet people in public at events, we do hear anecdotally how much the children enrolled in the program are love to read. And the only times I've heard that a child is reluctant to read, like an older child, is a child who was never enrolled in Imagination Library. Now, again, those are anecdotes, but just our experiences being out in public at events, we get so much positive feedback from families. So,
I would add one thing too. You saw the results of the survey Alex shared, and all but one question in that survey is a yes, no, more, less. But there is one question that's open-ended on the survey, and I don't know. I typically don't always enjoy filling out those, and I can't have to admit I don't often fill out those open-ended questions. Yet for this survey, more than 90% of the people who completed the survey took the time to put a comment in there, and the question was, just list one benefit of Imagination Library. And we received thousands, more than 40 pages of comments from families. Alex shared some of those around increased family time. It's brought families together, but also many comments around children now having the patience to sit and listen to a story. One in particular said, my child is 4 years old now. For 2 years, would not sit down with us and read. Now, after getting these books, is coming to us and wants to read together. I mean, these are critical skills and habits that a child is learning before they go to school, right? We call them executive function skills, sitting still, having the patience. These are things that they're learning through Imagination Library. Interest in other topics is a comment that comes up often. Sparking imagination. There are just so many amazing stories from this program, and it's one of my favorite jobs, and I know Joan's as well, as we're out and about talking to families, and they just can't say enough about how much they appreciate this program.
Got another question. Is there a performance difference in third grade literacy between Imagination Library kids and kids who weren't enrolled in the program? Do the benefits carry over long term after age 5? And
We have seen some studies where they've done longitudinal. I know Middletown, Ohio, had done a longitudinal studies and did find that some of those gains that they showed in kindergarten were still present in third grade. Also in Memphis, Tennessee, they had done some studies in the past, and they looked at rates of attendance, and they found that children who were part of Imagination Library had better attendance in school, and they had fewer suspensions also. We're hopeful that at some point in time we could do something more of a longitudinal study here in Cuyahoga County as well.
Lauren, word is on from she's a regional director for Imagination Library nationally. She's our regional director. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that answer, if you wanted to unmute yourself, Lauren, about all the studies that have been done.
Yeah, and I did not come prepared, so I do not have the research pieces in front of me. But yes, when I am talking to new potential program partners and families, yes, there has been research done, and there are significantly higher test scores on those third grade standardized achievement tests compared to peers, which I find very significant because that is 4 years after the Imagination Library program has ended. So yes, to answer the question in the chat, there is a direct correlation to higher literacy throughout life and not just in the here and now.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to Bob and to Joan and Lauren. Thank you for hopping on with that. Going on with the call to action on the adult side, in today's rapidly evolving job market, individuals need to develop the skills and flexibility to adapt to changing industries and technology. I recently came upon a recommendation that included life-wide learning, where individuals learn in different environments and situations, not just in formal educational settings. I liked that term. The last 3 call to action items emphasize the importance of adult educators. Integrated education and training uses contextualized curriculum that weaves literacy and numeracy instruction into sector or occupation-specific training so that workers gain practical job skills while at the same time advance their foundational basic skills. An example would be ruler measurement lessons as part of a manufacturing or construction training program. According to a report by ProLiteracy, adults are statistically more likely to increase their skills and advance in their careers when job training includes literacy and numeracy skills in the context of and incorporated within job training or for specific sectors. Adult educators teaching foundational basic skills are great partners to develop contextualized lessons and work with skills trainers and employers to customize instruction. There are many successful models of this throughout the country in Washington State, Washington, D.C., New York, and in Ohio. The idea is to pair foundational skill building with workforce preparation and training for in-demand occupations, and it's been successful for English language learners as well. Adult educators can provide training in workplaces to allow adults to maintain and develop literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skills. Examples of past partnerships include on-site high school equivalency classes for hospital workers in environmental, food service, and patient transport positions, and English language classes in a food processing facility. Now more than ever, funding for literacy, whether early childhood or adult, is critical. Please advocate that funding to advance literacy continues. Thank you so much for your time. And as we mentioned before, a recording as well as the slides will be available soon. Look for details in our upcoming weekly newsletter and on our website. From all of us at the Literacy Cooperative, we thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Great presentation.
Thanks, Laura.